We usually imagine human trafficking as being men using violence, but in countries like Moldova and Romania, a lot of those imprisoned for human trafficking are actually women. And many of these women have been victims before becoming perpetrators. So I conducted interviews in Moldova's Ruska prison to understand how exploitation is reproduced. I'm Ludmila Bogdan, and this is my Quickfire Q&A. The most surprising finding was that trafficking felt normal to them. A lot of women I interviewed were already living as victims within these trafficking chains. So for them, from a victim to trafficker, it didn't feel like something new. It actually felt like something familiar, but they already have experienced that. And I call this trauma normalization, and this is one of the key elements that explains why trafficking persists. There are three recurring mechanisms explaining that. First is survival, second is profit, and third is trauma normalization. So some women start exploiting other women because in this way they can improve their own role within the trafficking chain. They become the girlfriends of the main trafficker, the main friend, they start on taking more managerial roles, more leadership roles, and in this way they improve their own position. And from being exploited, they start exploiting others. I also observed that in other scenarios, some women exploit other women because if they do what has been done to them over and over again, their own trauma feels less exceptional. So it's a coping mechanism. Money matters, but without addressing the trauma, we can't really solve human trafficking. Because trafficking doesn't rely only on force alone, it relies on trust. So many former victims know what worked on them, and they start replicating that on other women. So for example, many are using friendships to recruit other people, are using shared hardships, and are using the promises of protection to recruit women, to exploit them, and to maintain them in this system. And that's why it's so difficult to detect this type of human trafficking. Trafficking is not only a crime, it's a system of social reproduction. So when we have victims who are absorbed back into the system as perpetrators, the prevention already fails. The punishment alone can interrupt individuals, but not the system. So if we really are trying to tackle this problem, we have to address the trauma, that is equally important in this system. But some women enter trafficking not to harm others, but to stop being harmed themselves. And that's why it's so important to address trauma alongside enforcement. Without that, trafficking will adapt and persist. Because trafficking is not just a crime, it's a system that recruits through trauma and trust.